Hey guys, Spirit of the Law here. A new balance patch for October and maybe November came out today. So let's take a look at what's new and break down how the changes are going to impact the various units and civilizations. We'll begin with all the tweaks coming to infantry, which traditionally hasn't been seen all that often in Castle Age. First, the cost of supplies has been dropped significantly to now half the food and less gold than before. Supplies, of course, reduces the food cost of the militia line, and at this point, the tech pays off after just 10 swordsmen. So really, if you're just making even a relatively small number, that definitely seems worth picking up beforehand. The price drop means the Slavs getting it for free is a bit less meaningful, but they still get it instantly, and they're also more of a cavalry civ in Castle Age, so I wouldn't really consider it much of a nerf. Combined with this, the long swordsman upgrade cost specifically is being reduced, and they're also going from 0 to 1 melee armor. That extra melee armor carries through to the two-handed swordsman as well, but doesn't impact the champion, which already has 1. Besides making long swordsman in Castle Age a bit more viable and that transition being a bit easier, this is also a nice buff for civilizations who are missing champion, but have a nice late game bonus for their militia line, such as the Malay or Bulgarians. Another civ that comes to mind is the Mayans, who sometimes need swordsmen to counter elite Huskarls, and for everyone else, an extra melee armor really never hurts. I can't help but feel infantry in general just isn't well suited for team games though, outside of the odd unique unit, and the fact the Obu is better than the long swordsman in every way, but so far hasn't been nerfed, is a pretty good indication that longswords can safely handle 3 small buffs at once. Another general change was that the cannon galleon's projectile speed was increased from 1.95 to 3, though you'll notice Spanish still fire faster. This will definitely make it more difficult to dodge those shots coming in, and it was always something that looked a little off. The next change is to the Sicilians' team bonus, and their transport ships now have more line of sight and a 50% cost reduction, rather than the team's first transports being created for free. The free transport ship did seem a little odd, and I figured last patch it wasn't going to stick around for long. Situationally, having access to a free scout on water could create some unfair situations, where players could scout out your docks or island with no possible counterplay. This may be objectively one of the worst team bonuses in the game at the moment, given it only applies to water maps, saves relatively few resources, and doesn't give much of a tactical advantage. But at the same time, I also think Sicilians are in a pretty good place right now, as a sort of quirky but middle-of-the-road civilization. Given this is now the 3rd attempt, it's pretty obvious the devs want a transport ship team bonus of some kind, and I expect this one is going to stick around. But speaking of Lords of the West civilizations, for the next one we're going to look at the Burgundians, who have lost their instant food to gold conversion with their unique tech Burgundian Vineyards. So now it only gives a gold trickle for your farmers. Now this tech has undergone a transition over a few patches now, from being only a one-time food to gold conversion to now only a trickle, and it's debatable whether or not this was a nerf. It kind of depends on when you get the tech, as in Castle Age the cost of food is almost always higher than gold at the market, so it was arguably a loss in value if you switched all your food to gold too early. On the other hand, that almost always flips in Imperial Age eventually when everyone has fully boomed. Ultimately, I think this just simplifies the tech and makes its timing less critical. The earlier you get it, the more gold you'll get from farming. Pretty simple. Taking a small detour into the Bulgarians, there was a small bug I pointed out in a recent video and the developers fixed it. Nice job. The next change was for the Vietnamese, and their tech Chotras now adds 100 HP instead of 50 to their elephants, with no change in cost. For context, with Bloodlines, generic battle elephants have 270 HP, and elite battle elephants have 320. That means Vietnamese battle elephants with Chotras had 19% more HP after the tech, whereas now they have almost 40% more HP than other battle elephants, which feels like a big jump for an already tanky unit. Against Castle Age crossbowmen, for example, they take over 120 arrows now, instead of the usual 90 with all Castle Age upgrades. To give that some context, the 124 arrows is more than triple what a fully upgraded knight would take. Maybe surprisingly though, Burmese with all their extra armor still do much better against archers, taking 270 crossbow arrows, so it's not that we're in unprecedented territory. Likewise, in Imperial Age, this means 16 more Arbalester shots than they took previously, but again is still lagging far behind Burmese when it comes to archers. Obviously, more HP helps not just against archers, but really any unit, and for another example, they'll take 7 hits instead of 5 from halberdiers. Keep in mind, Vietnamese are consistently in the bottom 10 civilizations by online win rate, so I don't mind the idea of giving them a buff, especially if it's something that complements their archers, while also doubling down on their identity as the civ with really high HP. I still think good cavalry civilizations are going to be a struggle, as Vietnamese don't specialize in very mobile units, and you can see 4 of their 5 worst civ matchups are against top tier knight civs. I doubt more HP changes that dynamic very much, and at the end of the day, knights don't have to engage with elephants if they don't want to. The next change was to the Portuguese Feitoria, which initially had me concerned I'd have to make a third video breaking it down, and they were going to change the numbers. But it turns out I'm safe for at least another month, and they just cut its HP in half. For context, Portuguese have the worst 1v1 online win rate at the moment, so it's a bit of an odd choice from that perspective to nerf them. To be fair, Feitoria did have more HP than a castle, so maybe there were complaints that it was a bit too high. At the same time, it's a little sad to see them target the Portuguese late game, as that's the only period in the game Civ has some redemption. Even if Portuguese on land maps are a little underwhelming, the devs still deserve some credit that the days of the 35% win rate Civs are over, and even Portuguese end up with some favorable matchups against a few select civilizations. Obviously, that probably won't change as a result of this patch, and I expect they'll stay at the bottom for 1v1s and maybe average to below average in team games. Now, something a little surprising about this patch is that Poles and Bohemians had no changes, despite coming up on the 2-month milestone of their release. Initially, I assumed Poles would be a top-tier pocket civ with their heavily discounted knights and early castles, but maybe that isn't the case, and missing Paladin and an armor upgrade ultimately balanced that out. It could also be the devs are waiting for a bit more data and a larger sample size to see how things shake out. Moving on from balance changes though, there's also been a shakeup to the multiplayer rank queue that I think is worth bringing up. Something players have been asking for and we're now getting is a timeout system for people who leave rank queues after a match has been found. Prior to this change, when someone got matched up in queue and didn't like the map, they could just leave and everyone in the queue had to restart from scratch. It now says there'll be a progressive penalty for people who do that, presumably starting at a 5-minute timeout. Obviously, the devs are hoping that the threat of that is enough to make people say, I don't want this map, but I may as well stick around and play it out. Now, this is a bit of a tricky topic, as it's not really fair to map dodge and force someone willing to play the map to re-queue, especially if it's a team game and up to 7 other people are affected. But there's also an argument for not forcing people to play maps they don't like. The average 1v1 arena game, for example, lasts just under 30 minutes, and that's a lot of time if you really don't like that map, though it's not to say this is only an arena issue. That said, it's also hard to think of a solution that would be fair to everyone. While it may feel like giving everyone unlimited map bans is the best approach, I think there's technical reasons they can't do that. I'm under the impression that matchmaking works by comparing players' elo and geography, trying to get players who are similar in rating and also close by, so they have better game performance. Obviously, it gets less picky the longer you're in queue, so it's not always going to work perfectly. If it then matches 2 players and one has banned everything except Arabia and the other banned everything except islands, I don't think the system would know how to handle that. And at the least, queue times would definitely go up on average. Short of completely overhauling the back end of matchmaking to make map-specific queues, which I don't think they're going to do, dodging is just always going to be around, and the devs are just hoping this mitigates it to some degree. One thing that's really going to help though is they say ranked queue will continue instead of stopping if another player leaves from the found match page, which even in and of itself seems like it should help quite a bit, and I'm not sure why it wasn't that way to begin with. There's also a nice small quality of life feature added where you now have the option to set farm auto reseed as default. Now this isn't going to be for everyone, as more advanced players typically like to have control over when farms are reseeded in early Castle Age. There's also been 7 new maps added, which seems like quite a bit this round, and while I won't go into detail with them, it's always nice to have more variety. The most popular map, Arabia, also had some small tweaks and bug fixes, which are very welcome and should give it a more consistent generation. In addition, they've also added new missions to the co-op campaign offerings, and while I haven't tried this yet, I love the idea of it. It's cool to see they're adding full scenarios like Attila the Hun now, and I think it's a great entry point for people playing online. It seems like a great way to get the experience of playing with a friend, but without the stress and fast pace of full-on multiplayer. So that's a rundown of the September/early October and probably into November patch. I'm especially excited to play some Vietnamese and to use some Long Swordsman, though probably not in the same game. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.